My name is Richard Furrow, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
So I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glow Cloud team.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mike Gibbs, and I am here to help you build your technology career. Maybe you have a goal of being a cloud architect. Maybe you have a goal of being a security architect. Maybe you have a goal of being an AI architect or an enterprise architect. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to get your first tech job. Well, that's why I'm here to help guide you to build your best technology career. I try to come online once per week and answer career questions. I want to let you know that we have two other free initiatives going on before I start getting into questions. One of the initiatives is we have a free How to Become a Cloud Architect webinar tomorrow. In that webinar, we'll talk about the cloud architect role. We'll talk about what we do. We'll talk about every skill you actually need. We'll talk about how to stand out, how to get hired when you don't have the experience, how to bypass HR so you don't have to contend with the job descriptions and you can have the real skills. It'll be a real discussion, an honest discussion, a frank discussion, and then I'll give you about an hour or so to ask me questions live and free on Zoom. You can sign up for that. It's in the description of this video. My team just put it in the chat box. I also wanted to let you know that in the description of this video, we've got a guide on how to become a cloud architect. If you're looking for a concise guide, get that guide, then come to the webinar. You'll be prepared. And actually, the reality is you can ask me questions based upon that guide too, or any of the questions that pop up when I talk about how to get your first cloud architect job. So now that is also in the description of this video. But please, I'm only able to be here until 12:30 today. So if you've got some questions, bring them. I know that when I started my career, I spent a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money going in a whole lot of ridiculous directions. And then I got some strategic guidance. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And then a couple months later, I was a senior engineer at MCI WorldCom. About 3 months after that, I went from not working in tech to being one of the first CCIEs in the world. And then I was moved into a principal architect role in 2 years. Now, if I didn't have that guidance, I never would have been able to do that. So I'm here free to do that. So ask your questions. Tyrone, I know you're behind the scenes. Have we seen any questions come in? Tuan Hughes, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a little while. So you've been in tech for about 15 years. So some of your peers are VPs. Some of your peers are distinguished architects, and you're stuck here at senior engineer and can't get ahead. And the question you wonder is why? Because your skills are better than your peers. So Tuan Hughes, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. One is, I truly believe that after 15 years and something like this in a senior engineer, you're going to have rock solid engineering skills. The question I have for you is, what have you been studying? Have you been studying engineering? Have you been going to more certification classes and getting more hands-on labs, learning a wide variety of new things? Say maybe you're in networking, you get some cloud stuff, you get some security stuff, hands-on certifications. Is that what you're doing? And the next question I have for you is your peers. If you were doing tech, what were they studying? Did they go to business school and get an MBA? Did they take leadership training? did they take executive training? So I'm going to wait for 2 answers for you. The first answer is, what have you been studying? And the second question is, what have they been studying? And because I know what it usually happens in these situations, but I want to get your perspective to see if what you're seeing is the same. I know there's a little bit of a delay. So the answer to the first question is yes, you've been focusing on lateral certifications, hands-on things, get it. And I'll wait a little longer so I can get the response to what your peers were doing. I have a gut instinct that they were focusing on leadership or business or strategy or something like that, which was further away from the technology, but I'll wait for your response. And I know there's a delay on YouTube between me. I just want to be very specific and precision, get all the facts before I make an answer. They've done more business stuff. Okay. Thank you, too, and Hughes. So here's what's usually going on. And when this occurs, I kind of had a feeling, but I just wanted to confirm what my gut instincts were. So there's when it comes to moving up in any organization, there's the skills that it takes to move up, and then there's the skills that it takes to be great at where you're at. So you're a senior engineer, and that's a great job. You've probably been building and performance doing some great things, and every piece of training you're doing is all engineering. So what you're doing is you're doing your job and you're learning how to do your job a little differently, but you're still learning how to do the same job. Now, if it comes to move up, it's generally speaking a different set of skills. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you actually ask the tech executives of what are the skills that you have in the top 25% of your people, what are the skills that you take when you promote? They're actually an interesting set of skills. They're the skills that make you impossible to replace by AI, regardless of where you sit on here. And these are the skills that are literally at $100, $200, or $300,000 to your salary. So here's what tech executives say, what they want and what they're looking to promote. They say they want someone that can be strategic and think strategically, meaning they can look at the big picture of everything that's going on around them, and knowing how technologies could be used to enhance that business with everything going on around them, to be able to understand the various trade-offs between the options and how they relate back to the business, and to be able to drive the business in a strategic direction. Now, the next thing that tech executives said and the people they promote is the ability to make decisions under uncertainty. Now, the reality is when you're a leader, when you're a cloud architect, security architect, AI architect, any of these positions, you're going to have to make decisions. Unfortunately, there's never going to be a perfect decision because every decision you make is going to help something and hurt something else. And unfortunately, you're never going to have all the information. It's going to almost feel like a CISSP exam where they give you 50% of the information, then you have to make an inference. Well, that's exactly what we do as architects. That's exactly what tech executives do. So the vision and strategic thinking and decision-making under uncertainty. Now, the next thing executives say in a top 25% of person, the people that they're paying that are moving into the bigger roles, is they're looking for a level of communication and the ability to exercise influence. So the ability to create a clear message, to take some really complicated technical concept and translate it into something a decision maker can understand so they can say yes or no. They're also looking for someone that can build a narrative and tell a story to really influence an audience. And they're looking for someone that's got really good listening skills. Now, the next thing that they say, as surprising as it is emotional intelligence and social intelligence. And what emotional intelligence and social intelligence is the understanding of empathy for the key stakeholders. You understand and get their needs met. They are the ability to relate to others. They are the ability to regulate your emotions, how in a really stressful situation, you can keep everybody moving as opposed to bursting into anxiety or flames, what have you. They also say conflict resolution and negotiation. Now, the top 25% employee, this is what executives say they want. And these are really great skills because these can't be replaced by AI. The next thing we're seeing is coaching and mentorship. They're looking for someone that can coach and mentor. They're looking for someone that can create a culture of psychological safety where people feel safe and aren't afraid to work. They also said someone that can lead through transformation, and that means change management of everything from technical change management to change management of culture. And they say stakeholder management, stakeholder collaboration, the ability to really work and interact with vendors. Now, two and Hughes, that should sound interesting because that's exactly what a cloud architect does, what an enterprise architect does, what a security architect does. But it's also what a director of IT would do, a VP of I would do, a CIO would do. So it's much of the same thing. So what I would suggest you do, Two and Hughes, if your goal is to move up, appreciate all the great time that you've had as a senior engineer, and then focus on the leadership skills, the executive presence, the CXO relevancy, which helps you do that. And focus on your presentation skills, your leadership. And that's where you're going to go to those other jobs. I bet, as you mentioned, they're doing the businessy things, and that's what we're doing. So the key to getting a raise and getting promoted is to be what the hiring manager wants to promote you for, or what the leadership team wants to promote you for. I did this early in my career. I focused too much on the tech. I love the tech. I really do love the tech. It's my hobby. So I decided to make the tech a hobby in my house. And I decided to train most of my time on business and leadership skills. And that literally got me from senior engineer to principal architect in less than 2 years. And I know you could do it too. So try that, especially with your great background. Focus on some of those businessy things, and I think you're going to get to your goals real fast. Great question, Two and Hughes. Thank you so much. Regarding today's video I posted on YouTube, which skills are most valuable when transitioning into a cloud architect role without experience? So I'm going to kind of make it clear for you everything that I would do and the way we do it, because I've had a system that I've used for about 25 years. Now, I've never been too articulate about really what it is, but I'll make it very clear to you. So you have to be in the top 25% of the skills of all the cloud architects out there. Now, I'll talk about what that means in a minute, but you have to be in the top 25. And the reason we train you to be in the top 25 is when you're in the top 25% of the people that are out there, people don't remember whether you had experience or not. They interview you and they're woefully impressed. Now, the next thing that after you build the skills, because you have to have the skills for the job, then after you train the skills, and these are going to be business and technology skills, and I'll talk about what they are in a minute. After you have the skills, then is when you go out there and you get your certifications, because you can't get hired with certifications alone. You need the actual skills for the job. And I can tell you, when I started my network engineering job, it was the same thing. I had a CCDP, I had a CCNP, and no one cared because I didn't have the relevant skills and I wasn't in that top 25%. I changed that, and poof, I had a network architecture career that was lightning fast. So the key is, what we're talking about is you got to have those skills, and they're not just tech skills, they're business skills too. Now, once you have the skill, that's when you get the certs. Now, the certs that matter are going to be in the top 25%. For example, if I train a cloud architect, it's going to be an AWS Solutions Architect Professional, which less than 3% of the AWS certified population has. It's going to be a CISSP, which is our intro to security, which again is, top 5, top 10%. And then we're going to use a TOGAF 10, which is again a top 10% certification. So first you get the skills, you be the top 25%, then you get your certifications. Now, after it's that, the real secret to it is you've got to go out there, and now you've got to go create a LinkedIn profile and create the right profile and highlight the right skills and build your portfolio and show it off to the world. And then when you're done with that, it's about polishing up your interview skills. And this is what I teach, and this is part of my system. And then it's even teaching people how to negotiate a higher salary and doing it all. So that's there. But when it comes to being an architect, you have to understand what the job actually is. The job is to go to the client, to meet with the client's executives, to meet with the client's stakeholders, to understand their business goals, business needs, to then create an architecture team to come in and examine the client's current technology, because in half of the cases, they won't even know what they have. And then create a team of architects to lead the solution, to design the solution that they need. It's then bringing the solution back to the client, getting the client's feedback, and then creating all architecture artifacts, statements of work, creating a governance structure, and moving on. So as an architect, we don't touch the technology, we're designers. So what does it take to be an architect? And these are the skills. And if you don't have any of them, you won't be able to do the role. The first and most critical skill for the cloud architect, enterprise architect, or any AI architect is communications. Because nobody gives us a piece of paper and says, build this, Mike. Nobody. What they do is they say, here's our business problem, go figure it out. And if you don't completely understand that business problem, you can't explain that business problem that came from the C-suite to your 50 technology people that are going to work on your team, because they have to solve that business problem. So you have to translate. So you have to be a precision communicator. Get the information wrong, architecture falls apart. Get the information wrong, the client's business you created falls apart. 100,000 people lose their jobs. So you have to communicate very well. Now you have to know how to lead an architect team. And I've got people with 20 years experience. If they don't display the leadership, I can't hire them anyway. So they have to have good leadership skills to drive an architecture team. They have to be able to sell. Now, if you want to get your first tech job, you have to learn how to sell it, because you have to sell yourself to the hiring manager. And the better you sell yourself, the more you earn. And that's why I teach our students how to sell, because it's critical for the role, but that's going to be the next one. The next critical skill is executive presence, because if I walked in the room with an executive that's going to buy $50 million in technology, if I can create the right strategy, and said, hi, my name's Mike Gibbs, and today we're going to talk about BGP. We're going to talk about the BGP finite state machine. I'd be escorted out of the room. Now, if I had executive presence and I walked in and CXO relevancy, I could say, it's really interesting that you've got an 18% CAGR. Now, how is that impacting your systems, and where are you taking that in the future? And what can we do to help you increase that and scale with that growth rate? So again, they're going to look for that. So, and then the next piece is business acumen, because if you're going to try and solve a customer's business problems and you don't understand business, how do you solve the problems? It would be like, how would you cook if you didn't know what a recipe was and oven was and spices was or food was? You can't. So those are the tech skills. Now, the next piece is going to be those are the business skills. The next piece is going to be your tech skills. Now, your tech skills are not how to. That will never get you there. You can do 1,001 labs, 20 years of engineering, you still won't have the tech skills. The tech skills are not how to build. The tech skills are how to design. And I'll give you some examples on what I'm referring to. What kind of wide area network would I use to connect to the cloud? When would I use a private line versus a software-defined network versus an IPsec tunnel versus a SASE WAN? How would I secure my demilitarized zone? Do I need one layer of next-generation firewalls or two layers of next-generation firewalls? Can I get away with the cloud provider's WAF, or do I need 2 layers of firewalls before the cloud provider's WAF? How are we going to deal with the logs that come in? Do we want to set them to a SIEM system? Do we want AI? Do we want to use a customer IAM system? And why? And which customer IAM system? So again, it's this evaluation of trade-offs. It's the knowledge of how systems work versus how to put it together. So that means you're going to need to know network design. And of course, if you're with us, we teach it. Network design things is like wide area network selection, BGP, subnetting, supernetting, route aggregation, VLANs tagging, trunking, how to protect with QoS to protect the security. Then we would get into compute, and there's really only 4 kinds of compute that you need to know. That's what to use, when to use it, how to use it, and what's in the best interest of your client. And that would be things like a virtual machine or a container, or application virtualization, or function as a service. Then it's good knowledge of your storage area networks, because there's the same on every single cloud: block storage, object storage, and file storage. Knowing the strengths and weaknesses of these kinds of storage, and and how to work around the weaknesses of these kinds of storage compared to data center storage. Knowing what's appropriate and then using the right kind. That's going to be a critical skill. Now, knowledge of database is going to be critical. Now, you're not going to be a database architect, and you will have one with you on a big cloud architecture, but you should understand the relational databases versus the NoSQL-based databases, and know how to scale them, and know how they're set up, and know how they're designed, and understand why you can't use some of them versus others that you can use in the environment. Now, you have to understand that the world is 98% multi-cloud. So we train people in OpenStack private clouds in addition to AWS, Azure, and Google, because you have to be able to understand it all. If it's not public cloud, if it's not everybody's public cloud. But that's real easy when you understand it. Now, we'll get into security, and we use the CISSP as baseline and intro level of security, and then we go beyond that. That's just for everybody, not our security architects, our standard cloud architect, because you're going to have to understand IAM and customer IAM and context-aware IAM and zero trust architectures, and how to set up demilitarized zones, defense in depth, and all the AI that goes involved in that. So, of course, we teach that to everyone, and you do need to know that. And for the most part, a little bit about application architecture, not how to code, but how applications are designed. They're the main elements of what you need to understand. But none of that is less important, because if you don't understand compute, you can't size where the workloads are going to run. If you don't understand networking, the entire thing is going to fall apart. And if you don't understand the business, your architecture is going to fail like 70 to 80% of cloud architectures, which provides zero value for the client. So there are the key elements. Now, I'm going to go into real detail on that on the webinar tomorrow, Cloud Doctor. I'd love you to join us. I'm going to talk to you about how you become the top 25% and why we only train for the top 25% and why it matters. And then I'll answer any questions you have. But hope to see you tomorrow, Cloud Doctor. Thank you for the great question. Hi, Mike. Do I think graduates of our architect program are equipped with the knowledge to teach at a college or university level? So, Ta, I can tell you the people that graduate our program are working at companies like Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan, Chase Bank, PNC Bank, Zscaler, LeaseWeb, Calient, Palo Alto Network. So they're working in big roles at very high pay. Now, would one of our people be equipped to teach at a college? Probably not. And we take people that are graduates of master's degrees in cloud computing programs, and then we retrain them so they actually understand cloud computing. But the answer is probably not. Generally speaking, to teach at a university level, you need a PhD in that one thing that you are teaching. In fact, I had to put an example. I have a friend that's one of the best network architects in the world. And his PhD is not in tech, so there's certain universities where they don't want him. And he's one of the best in the entire world, and anybody would be so lucky to have him. And I mean, best of the best of the best. So, I wouldn't say that our programs are geared towards academia. Our programs are geared towards the industry. And because to teach at a college or university, there are many, many, many arbitrary metrics, and it's not exactly what we're training for. Now, if people wanted to teach at a university, typically speaking, they would need a PhD. They would need to do a focused dissertation. They'd have to have some certain published things. And there is a track to being a professor. Unfortunately, the track to be a professor and the track to be a business executive are kind of going in the exact opposite directions. Now, I'm going to make it very clear. We need people to do research, and some professors and universities at the forefront of that. And some of these professors get deep, give people enough knowledge to be able to think both sides of the equation and make their own decisions. Those professors are worth their weight in gold, platinum, and diamonds. We also have some people that are teaching things that are totally irrelevant and to anything we would ever do. Now, I don't know. Maybe there's a plane in understanding English literature along the way, but I learned to practice internal medicine, and Shakespeare taught me nothing. Didn't help me in any way. So, and then it didn't help me in my network architect or my enterprise architect or any of the other architecture careers that I've ever had. So no, I don't think it would prepare you for university level. Good question, though. What is the Dingleman? So Dingleman, I did a what do you call it? I did a reference check on you, so I have a feeling you got some bigger and bigger and bigger, more exciting things coming your way. So how do you really impress executives in a leadership role? You get stuff done. And what do I mean? You deliver roles. So if you are a solutions architect in a sales team, and that sales team now sells a whole heck of a lot more because you're there, you're impressing executives. If you go out there and you're actually delivering results, creating some thought leadership documents that are driving customers, you're going to do that. When you come in and you're doing an executive briefing, and an executive briefing where a company brings in, say, 10 of their executives, and you're trying to show them some love, and you as a senior security architect are doing your thing, and one of the VPs comes in and somebody else is coming, saying something like that, realistically speaking, you're going to be there. So the key is you have to do the role. You have to deliver results. And you have to show that you can bring out the best in others. So, Dingleman, I'm going to go to the 4 E's real quick. I love the 4 E's. And I want to make this real clear to you. So the 4 E's came from Jack Welch. Jack Welch used to run GE. He had a philosophy that was so good. And realistically speaking, what we're talking about is he decided to train half of the world in management. And what they found was managers want 4 things. The 4 things that they actually want is energy, enthusiasm, edge, which means competition to do better work than the other people on the team, more of the better work, but the stuff that matters, not the other stuff. And you have to find out from your managers what that is. And energy, enthusiasm, edge, and execution, which is getting stuff done. So you have to be able to do that. In addition to that, you have to cover your pay. Now, for you, I don't think that's any big deal. But if somebody's paying a security architect $300,000 a year, you better be able to cover your salary. And that's pretty easy. If you're a $300,000 a year solutions architect and your team's selling $20 million of product at a 50% margin, you're easily proving your worth. So I kind of hope that helps. So deliver results, bring up the team, raise the value to everyone else. And executives will be very impressed. Mike, is AI something that's going to make your career or take your career? So, and then Tammy, please stick around. We have to address your question. It's one that we have to address, because none of those things that you listed will be enough to get anything close to architecture. And I really want to help you. So is AI something that's going to make your career or take your career? Well, it depends, Call Doctor. And the reality is AI has the ability for a lot of you to go out there and make more money than you've ever dreamed of. And AI also has the ability to kill about 40 to 50% of the tech jobs that are out there. So should you be worried about AI? Well, it depends where you're at, and it depends on what you do. I'm also going to tell you, Cloud Doctor, that I've been through several transitions in my career where 40 or 50% of the people doing their old jobs became irrelevant by the new jobs and were replaced with different jobs. So let's talk about jobs first that can never be replaced. These jobs are not susceptible to AI. These jobs pay the most, and AI creates more opportunities for these roles. These roles include the cloud architect, the AI architect, the solutions architect, the security architect, the sales engineer, the account manager, senior level leadership, director of sales, CIO, CISO, CTO roles. None of them can ever be replaced because they require a lot of coordination and facilitation across people. All those jobs require sales. All those jobs require leadership. All those jobs require extremely precision and precise coordination and lack of mistakes. All these jobs evaluate trade-offs. All these jobs require professional judgment and deep analysis and making decisions without complete information. So all those jobs, there's going to be more of them, and they're going to pay more, because the tech companies won't need as many people. And then there are the jobs that are easily replaced. So I'm going to talk about jobs that are easily replaced by AI that I expect to be gone within 5 years. The bottom 50% of software developers, the bottom 30% of, say, cloud engineers, the bottom tier 1, tier 2 help desk, the entry-level sysadmins, and the people that have 20 associate certifications and no real depth of knowledge. And here's the reason why. AI is better than they typically are, and it's typically cheaper. And with the speed that AI development is going for software development, with companies like Microsoft, Google, and Meta writing between 25 and 40% of their code with AI, that's coming. Know which engineers and other technology professionals are always going to be safe, no matter what. And that's going to be the top 25% of employees. Now, the top 25% of the employees have expertise. The top 25% of employees typically do 75 to 80% of the organization's work. The top 25% of employees are 49% less likely to make mistakes. The top 25% of employees know how to have professional judgment and know how to evaluate trade-offs and make decisions. The top 25% knows how to find weaknesses and performance to them. The top 25 knows everything about how all this stuff works, and they're experts at the job. So that top 25%, I also see earning a lot more, because the companies won't be paying the bottom 25 to 50% in a couple of years from now. Now, the people that are just doing those basic tasks, they have the biggest opportunity in the world. Right now, they're just doing hands-on stuff. Get out of the hands-on stuff, learn how the stuff works, learn the strategy behind it, learn how to deliver results with the technology, to develop deep expertise, professional judgment, wisdom, the things that the principal and distinguished engineers or architects typically are doing at that point. And now you've got a job that pays you 2 to 3 times where you're at anyway, and you can't be replaced by AI. So it's all how you take the AI. It's what you look at with the AI, what you're going to deliver with the AI, and are you doing the things that AI can't do? That's going to make you a more precious thing, because the things that I'm telling you to learn, almost no one knows how to do them anyway. So that's the secret to either profit by AI or kind of get crushed by it. But it's an opportunity for all of them. And every challenge brings an opportunity. So if I was young and starting out my career, I would be so excited. I'd find some AI architect job or enterprise architect job and get the training for that. And I'd take the ride of my lifetime. I started when the internet boom occurred. Helped design in large parts of the internet with large internet service providers, and I got to live through these stages multiple times, and it was fun. I picked something, I learned the skills that no one knew, and I rode that curve to principal architect within 2 years, and chief architect for an entire vertical at Cisco within 4 or 5 years of experience. That's what I did. Hope that helps there, Cloud Doctor. Carla, I am new to IT and currently have no prior experience. That's fine. However, you're studying for your CCNA. Would you recommend that I take your course even though you lack practical experience? So I can tell you what happened on my first job when I started. And yes, I could take you right now, and I could get you anywhere you want. And by the time you'd stay in our program until the day you're working as a cloud architect, and we wouldn't even rush you. But the key is there's a big difference, Carla, between hireable skills and certification skills. It all started when I was younger. I wanted to become a network engineer. I was currently practicing internal medicine. I'm a nurse practitioner. And what I did was I got an MCSE, which Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. People told me that would help me get hired. It didn't. And then I called the school, and they said I needed to be CCNP certified. Nobody cared about a CCNA. It wasn't enough. So I took the CCNA on my own. Then I took a 10-day, $11,000 CCNP boot camp in 1999. I'm not joking, 1999. That was the cost. It was taught by a CCIE, so it was a good experience. I came back. No one was interested in a job. So I called another school, and they said, well, you want to be a network designer, Mike? You need to have a CCDP. So guess what? I got CCDA certified and CCDP certified, and I applied for a couple of jobs, and I got rejected from all of them. Now, at that point, I had a conversation with about 50 recruiters across the United States, and I asked them this question, Carla. And I said, if you were to create the network engineer or architect that every manager would dream about, that the second they met this person, what would it be? They'd have to hire them, and they wouldn't care about their experience. They gave me their wish list. So I compiled this wish list of about 50 recruiters. And one of them actually said, you know what? I've got a friend that's like a part-time recruiter, works as a CCIE, guy makes more money than you can imagine. He said he'd be willing to talk to you. So I had a conversation with the CCIE, and he said, Mike, he said, can we talk? And he said, can I help you? Or are you going to be receptive to this? And I thanked us. I said, please tell me anything that you could tell me. And he said, Mike, here's the reason that no one wants to hire you. He said, you know Cisco, but you know nothing about networking. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, and I do this all the time to people, he said, can I ask you a few questions? And I said, sure. And he said, Mike, if you were going to run a large scale network and you had a lot of EIGRP speaking routers and you had a link that was flapping, could you kind of tell me what would be going on with the CPUs of those routers and what that might do to routing convergence or lack thereof in EIGRP? And I went, huh? And he said, well, I think we're getting there. He said, but let me ask you another question. Mike, how would you really think about an OSPF network that has 3,000 remote locations? Could you talk to me about the impact of the LSAs on the CPUs of those routers and what it would take to recompute an LSA database after a link flaps if one of them has a lot of external E2 routes? And I went, So what he said is, Mike, you've been taught how to configure routers, but you don't know networking. Now, he made me get this book. And there's 3 of them, by the way. And he said, you have to learn the internet protocol. So I bought this book. Just this book was on the internet protocol. He told me to read it. I read it. And then he said, Mike, before you think about applying, I need you to read Jeff Doyle's book, Routing TCP/IP. I need you to read Bassam Halabi's book. And here, I need you to start reading scalability things and looking into CPU and looking into this. He gave me a list of things to do, and I wrote it down like a crazy maniac. Then what I did is I said, here's what I am. Here's the wish list of people that hiring managers want. There's a reason I'm telling you the story. And as soon as I knew what that wish list was, I got skilled training development. I spent a fair amount of money on it, but I wanted to go to networking, and I had a six-figure healthcare job, and I couldn't get an intro-level networking job. I needed something. So I did that, and I filled it out, and I went on my first interview. Now, my first interview, I went straight to the hiring manager. I called a recruiter. It was part of my plan. Come on my webinar tomorrow, I'll tell you about it. But on this interview, something happened. I was interviewed by someone named Devendra, and Devendra asked me to tell me about yourself question, and I answered it. And I answered it in such a way that he was happy. And then he asked me another question. It was a question about OSPF. It was a silly question that was so basic that I gave him an answer, and he just started laughing. He said, I wasn't expecting that. And he then said to me, he said, we're the world's largest internet service provider. I'm really worried about people knowing BGP, and I can't find anyone in the world. And I said, I know you've never worked in tech before, so can I ask you about BGP? And he gave me a question, and I knew how important that was from all the people. I read the book Bassam Halabi, Internet Routing Architectures 5 times, read the BGP RFCs, and gave David or Devendra an answer that made him so happy. He used to go back and forth between David and Devendra, whether he wanted to be American or Punjabi for a name for the day. Now, after that, he asked me a question about something I didn't know, and I said, Devendra, I'm sorry I've not had the opportunity to learn that yet, but I'm highly energetic, highly enthusiastic, and I love tech. Devendra, I know what I know what I don't know, and if this was important to you, I'd stay up all night, read 1,000 pages a day until I was the best EIGRP person on your team. If you want to check my companies, let's talk about this, this, and this, which was my best. Okay, so why did I say this? I immediately got hired as a senior engineer. What did I do? So what I did was I trained to be in the top 25% of the job. By the time Devendra interviewed me, I was already in the top 10% of the people that he had on staff, and I never worked. So he forgot that I had nothing. So after I did that, and this is why I can help you, because we train you in those top 25% of the skills, and you know why? We know what they are. Because I'll tell you what, a cloud architect won't be using Glue, for example, or Athena, and we'll talk about why that actually is in 98% of the cases. So we train people on the exact skills for the role. And then after we do that, we teach you how to build your resume. We teach you how to create the LinkedIn profile to get to you. We give you the training and the certifications that are going to get you hired. And then after that, we teach you how to interview. So that's the way I do it. So that's what you need to do. Because I've gotten lots of people their job. It didn't matter whether they were Nicole, who was a teacher that's now a cloud architect. It didn't matter whether it was Yvonne, who's a waiter, who's now at AWS. It didn't matter if it was Jordan, who was a college student now at AWS as a solution architect. It didn't matter if it was Jennifer, who went straight to JP Morgan Chase as a solutions architect. It didn't matter if it was Jermaine, who was selling landscaping gear, who got his first job as an enterprise architect. It didn't matter if it was Emmanuel in England, who just got his first job as a security architect, first tech job. Nafuli in the UK, whose first tech job was a CTO. You have to be the best. So I'd recommend that we teach you, because all the years that you would be in engineering would not teach you architecture anyway. And here's the reason. Let's say you worked as a network engineer and you went to the routers, config T, interface, gigabit, Ethernet, and you put an IP address, router, OSPF, you could have pulled things in OSPF. That is systems administration. That has nothing to do with architecture. That'll teach you how to configure the routers. But Carl, you know what'll happen? If you were in an architect interview, I might say, could you tell me about the LSAs and OSPF? Tell me what types of LSAs exist in what areas. Tell me what those LSAs do. Talk to me about the OSPF finite state machine, because if you know that, you know how to tune OSPF. But no matter how many times you type on the router, you won't learn it. It's a different set of things. So if you want engineering, train for architecture. If you want architecture, train for architecture. If you want engineering, train for engineering. I hope that helps. You're studying cybersecurity, but confused about AI and cloud, and data filled, which is high security and growth for future. Please help me confuse between them. So here's what you need to understand. All cloud computing is, and it's nothing new. It is old technology. I've been working with it for 30 years. Is putting your stuff in someone else's data center. It's a rental model. So if I'm going to mute this because for some reason I didn't manage to get to you, but I would do that this morning, and it'll just go awfully crazy. So cloud computing is renting space in somebody else's data center. Right now, you can see that 85% of technology spending is going to private cloud, meaning companies building their own data centers, and about 15% is going to the public cloud. So cloud architects like me design the overall systems across all the clouds that exist. There's never an AWS solution as a general. In 98% of cases, it's multi-cloud. So we design these multi-cloud architectures to optimize our clients' business performance. Now, AI architects design AI systems to optimize business performance. AI engineers build systems to according to the AI architect's design. Now, it comes to security, we've got two kinds of jobs. We have jobs that can never be replaced, like the security architect, the CISO, the security program manager, those types of roles. And then we've got engineering roles like SOC analyst roles, which are like junior engineers that just look at logs and parse things to try to figure out what things that are going on. We have defensive security engineers that work to protect the systems. Network security engineers, for example, who work on firewalls and IDS, IPS systems and network security things, versus IAM people who work on identity and access management systems. So there's a lot that goes into security. So the question is really, what do you want to do? And the key is, do you want to build it? And those, understand, building jobs can be replaced by AI or automated. Do you want to design it? These jobs cannot be replaced by AI. And that's why we created that video on which jobs are safe from AI replacement and cybersecurity. And we were careful to only list four or five. And because we know that AI can write a script to kind of try a penetration testing script. AI can write a bash shell script. AI can write a lot of different scripts that you could use to test things. So I kind of hope that makes sense. You currently have your CISSP and testing for CCSP. Will TOGAF certification assist with business acumen? Not one bit. TOGAF is a framework that says step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. In step 1, we evaluate the organization's business. In step 2, we evaluate the business architecture, but they don't teach you what a business architecture is. In step 3, we evaluate this. So that's TOGAF. The only way to learn business acumen is really one of the three ways. Take a course like ours where we teach it, where we have MBAs that teach it, and we have PhD school, business school instructors that teach it. And I created that because I wanted to create something where we can teach everyone the skills to be an architect in a single thing. You can do what I did. I basically went to an MBA at Drexel. I did about half of it in my youth, 3/4 of it. And then I did a second MBA at Widener. And I was sent to about $50,000 to $100,000 of leadership and business acumen courses by my companies. And I probably paid for about the same. That's how I learned business acumen. So it's an expensive skill to learn. I'm also going to tell you this right now. The average salary of people with strong business acumen skills in, in salary.com is about $560,000 a year or more. And you can also see that in jobs that require business acumen, like a senior director at Cisco is about a $550,000 job. A senior director at Palo Alto is about a $550,000 job. A principal architect is a $400,000 job, $350,000, $400,000. So, the business acumen is a separate thing. It's kind of why I created this program, because if you look at my team, Alonzo spent $150,000 on his MBA. Mine was somewhat funded by employers, but overall my education to teach this kind of stuff was $300,000. Chris got lucky. His MBA was funded because his father was a dean at the business school and they got some family rates or something like that. But that's the kind of thing that it takes. And of course, I have business school instructors that teach, but business acumen is worth it. There are also some good business books you can read that'll also assist. I wrote a good book of business. I ran a video of the best business books that I listed that I've read in my career, or some of the best ones that I've read in my career. And you can see that in a video on my YouTube channel, Tyrone, if you can find it and link it. I just released it yesterday or 2 days ago. So hopefully it'll be easy for you to see. Omar, Mike, apart from excellent communication skills, if someone gets certified, does projects demonstrating his or her capabilities, but is not able to answer all the technical questions, then they won't be hired. I'm not sure what the second part of this. You have to have the skills. Now, you don't have to know everything. And you can do what I did and said, I'm sorry I've not had the opportunity to learn this, but I'm highly motivated, and this, and this. You can do that. I don't expect you to know everything, but you have to prove good knowledge. Now, what goes into that? One is, do you know what's going to drive the questions on your interview? Your resume. So, for example, I had someone recently come to me, and I said, with a resume, we were doing a class on where the questions go, and the person said expertise in MPLS. Now, when I saw expertise on multi-protocol label switching on a network engineer's resume, and I know that most people lie to me on an interview and lie on the resume, and I know that most people I can't hire, I said this to the person. I said, oh, you've worked with MPLS? And the person says, yes, I have a decade of experience as an engineer with MPLS, and it's one of the things I know best. And I said, okay. I said, since you know OSPF well, since you said you know MPLS well, could you tell me what it would take to architect an end-to-end MPLS network where I can get guaranteed bandwidth of 2 10 gig pipes and make sure that those pipes, should there be a cut in the system, will fail within 40 milliseconds? And the person said, what? I know how to turn the commands. I said, you said you're an expert in MPLS, and an expert in MPLS knows how to design a system. They would know what their underlying interior gateway protocol would be, like a single layer OSPF or a single layer intermediate systems. Then they would know whether they would use a tag switching or label switching and what those protocols would do. Then they would know how to signal their tunnels with RSVP signaling. Then they would know how to create a primary and a backup explicit class, or know what needs to be done. And then they would be able to design this. And he said, I don't know that. He said, but I'm an expert on putting it together and thinking strategically with this. And I said, okay. I said, could you talk to me about whether I should pop the label in an MPLS network on the penultimate router or the last router? Could you talk to me about the impact on the CPU and my routing stability? And the person went, huh. So then I said, okay, so since you don't know MPLS, what do you know best? Because again, I didn't really necessarily care if that person knew MPLS or not, but it was the first thing on the resume. You know, Omar, I had a student in a room. And I used the student in a room because he and I are really good friends. He is incredibly intelligent. He has had a massively successful architect career. And when he came to me, he was working in Home Depot and not in a tech role. And this guy, not a great heart, but he wanted to get techie on everything. So he went and got like a DevOps associate certification, which isn't architecture, a SysOps certification, which is an architecture, a developer certification, which is an architecture, and put all this Linux stuff on his resume. And Omar, he goes on like 15 interviews and he says, Mike, I don't know why I'm not getting an architect interview like you telling me. These people keep diving down all these tech rat holes that I don't know. And I said, Arun, can I dedicate this Thursday's class to fixing your resume? And Arun said, sure, why not? So we took the class. And the first thing I did is I took all that techie sysadmin stuff, got rid of all those developer associate and all those non-related certifications that he had. We kept his Google Professional Cloud Architect. We had another one. We kept that one that was good, got rid of all the stuff. We then got rid of all that sysadmin work that wasn't an architect's job anyway and replaced it with the things that he had experience doing, delivering architecture presentations, responding to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. We added the creation of architectural artifacts, designing systems for enterprise-wide security, whatever. Everything that he knew how to do that I had taught him. Within weeks, he had 3 offers. Now, the key was the resume was driving the bad interview. So only put things on your resume that's there. Now, the next thing is demonstrating effectiveness. So to be fair, when I was on that interview with the vendor where I didn't know how to answer the third question that he gave me, I had already impressed him. In fact, at the time when he says, Mike, this is what impressed him, why I was able to not know. So I'm going back to this to help you. The vendor's idea of a question on determining if I knew OSPF was, Mike, what's the multicast address for OSPF? And my response was, Devendra, are you looking for 224.0.0.5, which is used by all SPF routers, or using 224.0.0.6 for all designated routers and backup designated routers on a broadcast multi-access segment? Because I don't know how to answer that question otherwise. And he went, huh? He said, I didn't really expect you would know the SPF. I said, maybe you want, should I talk to you about the types of areas that exist in OSPF and the types of LSAs that exist in that area? And he said, okay. And I said, let's talk with the type 1 LSA that's generated by the router that advertises the states of its link. Let's talk about a type 2. And by the time I got to type 5, and then I said, would you like me to talk about the areas and which LSAs in those areas? The vendor said, no. It's clear to me, you know OSPF. So what I need you to do is first write your resume in the things that you can do. Then don't have anything on your resume you can't, because I promise you, here's what we do as hiring managers. We look for the biggest, most complicated, scariest, juiciest thing on your resume, and that's the first question we ask. Because if you can't answer the question to that, we can't hire you. And that way, instead of working hard on the interview, if you can't answer the first questions, we're just polite and courteous for the next 10 minutes, and then we say, come back. Sorry, we couldn't hire you because you didn't have experience. As opposed to, we could have hired you, you didn't have experience, we just couldn't hire you, and we didn't want to say why we couldn't hire you. So that's the key. That's how I would overcome the no. So I would make sure your knowledge is so good about every answer you think. And then when you don't know, to the one thing you don't know, do what I did and say, Devendra, I'm sorry I've not had the opportunity to learn that technology yet, but I'm energetic, I'm enthusiastic, and I'm passionate about technology. I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I can find the answers to things that I don't know very quickly. If this was important to you, I'd do whatever it takes to learn it. But right now, if you want to check my competency, I can talk to you a lot about this, this, and this, because you pointed them to what you know. Because at the end of the day, what do I care about a hiring manager? 1 is you're competent and you can do the job. 2 is that I can trust you. 3 is, do you know what you know and know what you don't know? And I don't expect you to know everything. So let me give you an example of things that you could know or you could not know. So an answer of a question, if I were to ask someone and they were coming in to be a cloud architect, and I said, could you talk to me about block storage, object storage, file storage? Could you talk to me about how they work? Could you talk to me about their strengths, their architectural trade-offs, and where I would use them? If they can't answer that question, they don't know storage and they can't design anything. Now, by comparison, I could say, could you tell me where this subnet 172.16.1.7 begins /30? And where it ends and where's the broadcast address, and someone couldn't answer that, I'd probably figure that, maybe they could use a subnet calculator. We could teach them and it might be no big deal. So it depends on what you don't know. And if it's something major, like not knowing compute or not knowing storage or not knowing security, that's going to keep you from getting hired. You have to get the skills. If it's something minor, something like, have you done this in your past? And the answer is no, that's fine. I hope that makes sense. But if somebody asked me something, but there's one more side of that. If I was on an interview and didn't get it because somebody asked me about a question, I'd spend a lot of time learning it because it would be a gap that I probably needed to know. Hope that helps. Hi, Mike. To be a cloud architect, which AWS services are the basic needs apart from this? So, Tenmei, I want to really help you here. Being a cloud architect is not about AWS services. 98% of organizations are multi-cloud. 98%. So to be a cloud architect, you need to understand the following: how to understand an organization's business requirements and how to design a solution. Now, that means you need to understand the compute, because you will be having virtual machines, I promise you, in AWS, Azure, and Google. And if you understand a virtual machine and you understand CPU cores and you understand processor architecture and you understand DRAM, whether it's a Google Compute Engine instance, an Azure virtual machine, or an AWS EC2 instance, it's the identical thing. You'll know what it is. Now, again, if you know storage, and you have to know storage, block storage, object storage, file storage, how to work around the performance, because block storage is actually slow, even though they would tell you it's fast in a certification. Things like RAID 0, things like RAID 10, and backup and secure backups of storage encryption, not any AWS names. That stuff isn't going to get you anywhere. Now, it's the same thing with databases. You need to know why you probably can't use AWS Athena in 98% of the businesses, but why you could use Oracle, why you could use MySQL, why you could use MariaDB. You might also know why you can't use DynamoDB in 98% of occurrences, but you could use MongoDB or by comparison, Apache Cassandra, where you might use Apache Cassandra if you've got a higher write load, but you might use MongoDB if you had a higher read load. And knowing how to architect that across the clouds, knowing how to secure a VPC, and knowing why you probably won't be using AWS WAF, why you might need a more industrial grade with behavioral-based anomaly detection, and why you probably won't be using the AWS IAM, but probably why you'll be using some form of context-aware IAM that might be integrated with an Okta, as well as another customer IAM system that's federated to something else. Again, that's not going to be in any of the AWS curriculum. So Tanmay, what you're going to need is you're going to need all the architect skills. The architect skills are understanding how to understand a business, how to profile a business, how to map out their business processes, how to map out their business value streams, and how to map out their business architecture. Because if you don't understand what's going on in the business, you can't solve any problems there. Then it's about asking the right questions, going back and forth between stakeholders, which are executives in the organization, which means you have to have strong leadership skills, strong sales skills, strong executive presence, and CXO relevancy. Then it's about taking those vague business problems and then working with an engineering team that you're going to have to lead that's going to touch the technology, learn the technology, and 80% of it won't be AWS technology. And then it's going to be designing your architecture, which is going to be across 50 vendors, not AWS. For example, you might be using Palo Alto and Cisco for security. You might be using F5 for reverse proxy. You might be using a specialty database from another provider that you're actually using that you're getting from the marketplace. Your applications won't be AWS. They'll be coming from Microsoft. They'll be coming from Salesforce. They'll be coming from this thing. They'll be coming from this thing. You'll have mainframes. You're going to have all this other stuff that are there. So you're going to have to learn the network. You're going to have to learn the data center and all the business skills. So Tammy, I've got a list of skills that you need to learn, and they are in a how to become a cloud architect document. Someone from my team drop a link to that. But also, Tammy, tomorrow I'm going to run a webinar. It's going to be a 2-hour webinar. And on this webinar, we are going to talk about the skills you need to become an architect, and I'm going to list every one of them. And they're not AWS services. They are real architect skills. 2, we'll talk about what you needed to get hired, how to learn the right things, what the right things to even learn are, and then how to get past. But please, if you're thinking you can do it with AWS services, I promise you, you can't. You have to understand the network, the data center, the cloud, and how to create a strategy to solve business problems. The AWS services, honestly, are just, I want you to look at it this way. So let's say you needed to go buy eggs at the supermarket. And where I live, you can go to Publix, you can go to Aldi, you can go to Bravo, which is great. I get all my Jamaican foods there that I love so much. But I've got 3 supermarkets that I can get my eggs from. They're all the same eggs. I want to get a virtual machine. It's the same virtual machine on all clouds. I want a container. It's the same container that I want on all clouds. When I want to connect to the cloud, it's the same options I have on all clouds. So understand that since 98% of the world is multi-cloud, you have to understand all the stuff, not the AWS stuff that works across all clouds. The stuff that's AWS proprietary doesn't work in other clouds. You need to understand all of it. Hope that helps. Join on us in the free webinar. My team, please drop a link to that. We'll get to meet, and I'll go over the real list, and then by then you'll know exactly what you need to learn. No money, heads up. Mike, do security architects need to know in-depth BGP? Not really. Or can they typically have network architects to fall back on? Security architects need to do security things. Security things are understanding the business assets and risks to those assets, and knowing how to reduce or mitigate the risk to those assets. Security architects need to understand application security and help set up a program that the developers and the application security people will follow. Security architects need to have a good understanding of IAM so they can choose whether to go context-aware IAM versus, say, attribute-based versus role-based, or a combination of them, and be able to understand that, you know, if I check the retina versus the iris, there's architectural trade-offs. If I check the face, there's architectural trade-offs. If I use a token, there's architectural trade-offs. And which ones do I need to know? So the IAM piece, who are you? What are you allowed to do? Keeping track of it. Now, security architects need to know a lot about network security, like what could be done on the firewall, what could be done on the IDS system, any kind of like network-based, what do you call it? For example, network-based data loss prevention systems, and those types of things. So security architects are going to need to know about that. Now, security architects probably should know the weaknesses in BGP and BGP security best practices. For example, knowing which routes to take in and knowing which routes to not export, and knowing what routes you should be able to and not taking them in for certain people so you don't get bad routes injected. So they should know that, but they can't be BGP experts. It takes 10,000 hours to be a BGP expert. Now, again, those security architects are going to have to know security operations. So knowing how and where to maybe input some SIEM systems and the type of operational procedures that you may help design. You're not going to work in operations. You're not going to touch the technology, but you need to know that. Good security architects know a lot about physical security and the weaknesses in the physical security system and know how and where to design various components of security. Good security architect should understand like RFID and all that wireless kind of stuff and how you might shield it. A good security architect's really good knowledge of encryption and understanding how encryption works and how to prevent attacks on the cryptographic system, and understands how compute power relates to the type of cryptography that's needed and the types of cryptography you will use. That's security architect stuff. And it is a big focus and it's a big domain. A security architect would be coming up with business continuity plans, disaster recovery procedures, risk mitigation. That's what we do. So can you be deep in BGP? Look, if you're a network architect like me, and then after being a network architect, then you decided to be a security architect like I did, absolutely. Do you need to be? No, you need to be really good at security. And in order, that also means understanding the network, the data center, and the cloud, and the weaknesses on the cloud compared to the strengths on the data center, and the weaknesses of the data center compared to the strengths of the cloud, and being able to know how to make the right decisions with everything. Hope that helps. No Money Heads Up. It's a great question. Hi, Mike. You're pivoting from a 25-year career in pharmaceutical development. Tell me, how can you leverage your background in AI architecture? So I don't know what you're doing in pharmaceutical development. I know I spent most of my life in internal medicine. But one thing I'll tell you, Carla, I've done very, very, very minimal math in my entire life. And anything that I've done, I've been able to do on a calculator or an Excel spreadsheet. So not a complicated thing. I just was answering both at the same time. So let's go back to this. So the key is, what did you do? Now, if you were working in a data and an analytic environment in pharmaceutical development, and you were running tests and performing advanced statistical calculations in the confidence interval of one of those things, and you have a good knowledge of calculus and other things, then AI engineering is something that you would have a lot of knowledge on. Now, if you've been working in that environment, maybe you've seen the kind of systems that are related to drug development now. Maybe you've got some familiarity with training data and what quality data is versus what non-quality data is. Okay, you said trial and project management. Okay, well, they're good. There's some of the good things we can come to. So what we'll do is we'll take the project management experience out and we can leverage that. So, here's the key for an architect. So if I walk through the architecture process, the first thing that I do is me and the account executive typically go and speak to the client's executives. That probably will take some help. Because coming from pharmaceutical, you might need a little work on that. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a little while. I needed a lot more executive coaching when I did a little job as a pharmaceutical rep for about 6 months in there as a kid, as a second job as a consultant for one of the companies. And then, and I needed a different level of executive skills, I can tell you, definitely, to be in an architect job, but that's neither there. But the fact in architecture, first I meet the clients. And then after I meet the clients, I have to meet with stakeholders. Now, I might not be able to meet with all the stakeholders. I may have to send a couple of people with different stakeholders. I might meet with the CIOs. I might bring in some really strong technical architects or design engineers to meet with some of the techies along the way. So I have to coordinate who's coming in, where the information's coming in, and a lot of communication. So there's that. Now, Jacques, when it comes to one of the things we do as security architects or AI architects is we respond to a lot of RFIs, RFPs, and RFQs. And I've got to tell you that I remember somebody giving me a 300-page questioned RFP. So what I actually did is I basically created an architecture team, and I had my good friend Jazz, who one of the best program managers I know, help me project manage it. So there's a lot of mini project management that we do, and that would help you with that. Now, if in the program management you are working with what I call CATs, and you might have been in the pharmaceutical industry, Cats are really smart people that kind of they're a little genius like. They kind of do their own thing and do meet to their own beat and kind of like that. Now if you were working with that, a bunch of PhDs like that, you're going to also have the cat herding skills. Cat herding skills, which are a really critical skill for the architect, is the ability to lead a bunch of people that don't necessarily work for you, that may only eat purple M&Ms or wear the same clothes every day of the week so they don't have to make decisions, but these are the geniuses you work with. That level of leading those types is going to be very beneficial. Now, I bet, Jacques, in your background, you had to take a lot of information and a lot of status reports, and you had to present that to an executive along the way. That will also help you along the way. So those are the kind of things that are going to be there. Plus, I'm pretty sure you probably developed a great degree of organizational skills in that job and a good degree of facilitation and getting things done. Now, after that, we typically work on executive skills because it's a different skill to be the executive and the soft touch than it is to be the person that gets jobs done. And that's why I usually bring someone in for me. But all that stuff is going to help you. You get that, you get the right underlying skills, the design skills, you're going to have a career that you like, and you're going to be surprised how fast and how good it actually is. Hope that helps. Hi, Mike. Can you become a security architect without having a degree? Absolutely. In fact, I had helped Daniel Bosu get a job at, you can see a video of him on our YouTube channel at JP Morgan Chase as a solutions architect, and he didn't even graduate high school. Now, that was rare. He's incredibly intelligent and a really great guy. But Delray got his first cloud security job, and he didn't have a degree. So I've gotten lots and lots of people. The degrees don't matter. For the most part, your certifications don't matter. Here's what matters. Can you do the job, and can you do it well? Now, my system has always been when it's your first tech job and you have no experience, you have to be in the top 25% of the people that are out there. That is not that hard to do. Now, the reason it's not that hard to do is most people spread themselves amongst 10 careers because they don't actually know what their career actually is or what managers want from their career. And by doing that, if you don't have the right skills to get hired because you spread yourself too thin, you're never in the top 25%. So sure, Emmanuel just got his first job. I'm pretty sure he didn't have a degree either. And Emmanuel's first job as a security architect, I can pretty much tell you recently that Michael also got his job as a security architect and he didn't have one. I have a student who just got a security architect job. I don't think he actually has a degree either. Real smart guy. But a lot of people don't have degrees. I can give you more examples. And here's the good news. Microsoft, Google, Amazon. I'm trying to think of the other big ones. But for the most part, companies dropped degree requirements a long time ago. So degrees don't matter. What matters is skills. And you have to have the right skills. And you have to have the right packaging. And you have to know how to sell yourself. And you have to have the right brand. You do that, you get any job you want. And you know what? All my degrees are in. My first bachelor's degree was in nursing because I was a nurse. Then my master's degree was as a nurse practitioner. I made it all the way to principal architect with that. And then when I wanted to move into chief architect and executive architect roles, I got an MBA. And I moved into that and a whole lot of executive things. I've never had a tech degree. And I actually tell people never to get a tech degree, that if they wanted to go into tech, to actually learn the career and be in the top 25%, and then to maybe get a degree in business. Because what they're going to learn in tech school is going to be the skills of yesterday, the skills that might have been enough 20 years ago. And that's why you're seeing people get out of college and they have double the unemployment of art majors, because everybody's being taught to do the skills that AI can do. Here, just learn to code. Here, learn to do this junior level thing. Learn to do this junior level thing. Learn to do this junior level thing. While you're at it, take English literature. Learn and study about politics. Learn and study about philosophy. And in the end, when you're done, the person probably has the equivalent of 50 hours of skills when they really needed 500 to 1,000 hours of real training in their field to be great. So that's what I would do. But I would actually become an architect, train to be an architect, and then I would let them pay for a degree. I would let them pay for my business degree, and then I'd probably let them pay for my MBA as well. That's what I did. I had my companies pay for a lot of that leadership and MBA training, but I did pay for a lot myself. How transferable are IT audit skills to the cloud architect? Well, some of those skills will be highly transferable. the ability to catalog information and look for anomalies, that is an incredible skill. In fact, a lot of times when it comes to architectures and there's a problem, it's spotting the anomaly. And that will be a big help for you because you've learned attention to detail, which is absolutely critical. You've also learned how to find hidden things and find meaning and derive information, which is a lot of what we do as a cloud architect. So those things are going to be great. Now, the opposite side is the finance career and the accounting career are kind of exactly opposite. The architect career and the engineering career are exact opposites, and that's where most people go wrong. And I'll explain what I mean by opposites. If I'm in finance, I'm going to figure out a strategy to take your money and get you a greater return on it, or get you the leverage that you need to get a greater return on something or purchase something. That's where I'm going to be doing in finance. Hedging risks and all that. And finance is all about making money. Architecture is all about designing a strategy to help an organization out of a problem. So I bet you have a lot of skills in that'll help you find the problem. And then it's learning the finance side or the architecture side, which is the strategy side of how to solve that problem. So you just got to learn the opposite side. The reason I say it's the exact opposite of engineering is architectures meet with the executives. Architectures learn about a business need. Architectures about building a plan and a strategy. Architecture is about creating a way to align people, processes, and technology to make the business. And that is all on the make the business money. Now, engineering, instead of where architecture is on planning, engineering is on building. Engineering is how do I pull cost out of this equation, not how do I create value out of the equation. How could I do the system cheaper? How do I make this system more hardened, for example? Typically speaking, that's where I would take it. Is there a way to exclusively be an architect for IAM? Well, the answer to that is absolutely yes. My friend Isaac is an IAM architect. And right now, because our students are working on zero trust, and IAM architects are the experts of that, he's actually teaching our security architects right now some zero trust architectures because they're there. Now, what I can tell you is, should you become an IAM architect? I probably wouldn't. I would become a security architect, and I'm going to give you some reasons why. And then I'm going to tell you why it's going to be a super, super hard role to get as an IAM architect, why it's going to pay half of what you could earn as a security architect, and why I don't recommend it from a security perspective or from a career perspective, even if it's a good idea. So let me give you let me kind of show you the architect spectrum. I'm going to draw it out for you right now because I want you to understand where all these roles fit in. And when you understand where the roles fit in, I want you to see its impact on salary. And I can show you why. So let me take this out. I've been creating a virtual whiteboard to teach a lot of stuff, but let me just draw this out for you. So at the top of the organization, let's say it doesn't matter where you really want to be. So let's say this is the top of a security organization. You've got the CIO. And underneath the CIO, you probably have something that looks like this. You typically have a chief architect, which is an enterprise architect, and this person is typically speaking. So this is going to be the chief architect. You may hear it called a CTO. You may hear it called enterprise architect. But what they're also going to have, typically speaking, is they're going to have a chief information security officer. Now, this is a security architect at the end of the day. This is an enterprise architect with lots of business. Now, understand that these roles over here are incredibly high-paying roles. You know, there's companies where you could get stock and be earning $10 million a year in any of these roles. So these are incredibly high-paying roles. Underneath this, we may have a regular enterprise architect. Now, this level enterprise architect is going to be responsible for people, processes, and technology. Now, 20 years ago, because we were talking with the 250K role plus 20 years ago for this. Now, the reality is, I know plenty of enterprise architects earning $500,000 a year. Then underneath it, we're going to get into the next level down. And this next level down is going to be what you call a cloud architect. And here's your multi-cloud architect. Watch over here. So here's your multi-cloud architect. And then underneath that, here's what you're going to ultimately find. You're going to find we're going to get solutions architects. And these are going to be people that are going to be experts on AWS, Azure, or Google. But we're also going to have another set of architects that fit in here. Now, understand, as we are here, this is an 80% business job, which is why it's a $250,000 to $500,000 job. Now we're getting to this cloud architect role. It's about a $220,000 job, $300,000 job if you've got some experience, 150 to 200 with none, which is typical that we see. But now we're going to have a security architect. Underneath the security architect, they're going to have an IAM architect, because IAM is only one part of this. So what I want you to understand the impact is, as you go down here and you get into more technical specifics, you become further from the leadership, which means you're going to earn less. So if I train you to be a security architect instead, and then you had the security architect knowledge and you got a lot of executive skills, potentially you could go straight into a chief information security architect role. But if your background was IAM, I'd have to bring you into a bigger, more strategic role for a couple of years to learn anything related to strategy before we could move you up. Because I'd have to get you out of the IAM, which is who are you, what are you allowed to do, and what did you do, to the entire security big picture long before you could ever think of this. Now, I've trained IAM architects to be security architects, and often it's because we can double their salary, and they have a bigger role. But could you do it? Well, what you'd have to do is first learn security, because understand that IAM without security is nothing. And please understand that. And then what you would have to do is you'd have to become an expert on IAM. And what does that mean? That means going out there and talking to the vendors that make these things, understanding when to use an iris scan and the complexities. For example, with an iris scan, you don't have to be too close to the scanner. Now, it's not as super accurate. Now, if I went with a retina scan, it's incredibly accurate, but I got to get your eye this close to the scanner, which might not be good if there was a flu season or a COVID or any other pandemic. At the same time, when I'm capturing the back of your eyes, I'm capturing your blood vessel patterns, like AV nicking or xanthomas, and I now know your medical history. I can now see if you've got hypertension, for example, or high cholesterol, which is now medical information. And how do I need to do that? Now, if I'm an IAM person, I've got to have an expertise in all the different types of IAM authentication devices. What's an RSA security device? Where is that good? Where is this not good? What about an authentication? Where's the strength? Where's the weakness? Where's the option? And your whole life is going to have to be, I'd say, 500 to 1,000 hours training on just the solutions, the strengths of the solutions, and the weaknesses of the solutions. Now, if you're a security architect, it's how do I design the entire big picture? How do I design the strategy? You'll still have to know IAM fairly quickly, but it'll be more business. The more business you are, the more money you make. And I'll give you the secret that was given to me, and it changed my life. It was 20 years ago, and I was a specialty architect at the time. And I had actually fallen asleep at a CISSP boot camp. It was a company-sponsored boot camp. I passed the test 5 days later, so it didn't matter. But I did fall asleep during the boot camp. And when I fell asleep, my manager said to me, he said, I know I forced you to take this CISSP thing just like everybody is. He said, would you like to know the difference between a $150,000 solutions architect like you and a $300,000 enterprise architect, which I think you should be? And I said, tell me. And what my manager said, right now you're focused on this little techie thing. And he said, that's great. But he said, there's no movement up for you with no matter how great you are. You're already in the top % tech. You're already in a top 5% tech job. For engineers, and our solutions architects, he said, the difference between you and that $300,000 person is executive presence, the ability to command a room, the ability to exercise influence and build a team of 50 as opposed to a team of 3 like you're able to do now. The ability to solve somebody's $2 billion problem with a $300 million solution and then sell it to them. He said the ability to be able to lead a team of people, the be able to present at a conference and get people to want to buy and schedule meetings. He said, you do that, you'll have a $300,000 enterprise architect job. Well, about 18 months later, I had an enterprise architect job. I'm not going to tell you what they paid me, but the key was I focused on that. So could you be an architect just on IAM? Absolutely. But would it be worth it? Would you have to get so off the beaten path? Yes, you absolutely would. So kind of hope that helps answer. So I don't have that much longer. I only have a few more minutes. I'll answer the questions that are here. And if one or two more pops in, I can do it. But other than that, I cannot. So I hope that helps. You just signed up for the Cloud Architect program. Congratulations. I can't wait to meet you. You come from a mid-range tech background. You plan to finish it by the end of December. Is it doable? I don't know until I meet you. And it all depends what you've been doing in your tech. I can tell you from experience, Yvonne, for example, did not work in tech and was hired by AWS within 9 months as his first, 6 months, honestly, as his first tech job. At the same time, I can tell you that, who's another one that got through really quick? Raymond took our program, had a nice job when he was done in a very short period of time. I can tell you that Jordan got hired very quickly by AWS in less than 6 months, along with his best friend, Yvonne. They were both my students and they got there. I can also tell you that Jeffrey got a job in a short matter of months, but they didn't have engineering. Now, I'll tell you, when I have engineers, I can tell you I had an engineer, Harsha, who was a cloud engineer for a decade. It took him about 14 months to kind of get out of the engineering mindset and into the architecture mindset. I have a friend named Jazz. Jazz was a cloud engineer for about a decade. It took us about 12 months to get in there because engineering and architecture are different. There's going to be a lot of things from engineering that are going to really help you. And a lot of the hardest parts coming from engineering is, can you not be an engineer and can you be an architect? So when someone starts to tell you about something and you already think you've got the problem solved as an engineer, because we do as engineers, now you're going to have to take a step back, zoom out, 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 and ask 1,000 questions to get to the exact bottom of it, because now you're going to be focused on the big picture. Could you do it by December? I don't know. 7 months? I've seen people do it. I had Joe Millen. He was a dual CCIE. He came to me and he was hired as a senior solutions architect at AWS within 2 months. He had extraordinarily good sales skills from a sales role at Cisco. And he also had a CCIE and he had about a lot of time. But we took him from engineering to architecture. But 6 to 12 months. And the key is, it's up to you. How fast do you learn? Do you really come to class? Do you do everything? Do you turn in the assignments on side? But it's definitely possible. But I can tell you more after I meet you in class and I see your capabilities and I can see your strengths, your weaknesses, your communication skills, and everything else that I would need. Hope that helps. If you want to become an enterprise architect, do you already have the skills to be an IT director, CIO, or CTO? In many cases, the answer is yes. So in order to be able to work across an enterprise, speak to the C-suite, understand the C-suite needs, gather requirements from stakeholders, understand the stakeholders' needs, negotiate between stakeholders and things, be able to create a solution, be able to present that solution back to the client, to be able to generate, I don't know, $1 billion, because I've sold $1.1 billion architectures before, convince the client to spend $1 billion and then create statements of work and then create architectural blueprints and then create governance structures and change management structures. That's exactly what a CIO would do. So the CIO role is basically an enterprise architect and an operations person. So what does that mean? So if you look at the top, you've got the chief information officer, and it gets typically broken off into 2 different roles. There's usually, there's 3. There's usually the security role, the chief architect role, and there's also typically the operations side. Now that would be like the VP of IT that manages all the tech workers and, and what they do and getting the job run to run the thing. So it depends. If you're an enterprise architect and with that you've got really, really, really good leadership skills, then you'll be there. And that's the main difference between a first line enterprise architect and a chief technology officer or a CIO. More executive skills. That's it. That's why I created a tech leadership program for those things, but that's exactly why. That's exactly what it is. And when I've got people that are already in architecture roles and that's their goal, it's a matter of changing their brand and finessing their communications and working on their executive presence and working on their executive presentations, working on the way others perceive them, really showing them a little bit of gravitas. And that's what it takes. And actually, Andy, I had a student in our enterprise architect program whose first job was a CTO, Nafuli, over in Manchester. Thoughts on AI security? Well, AI security is critical. Security is always critical. When it comes to security, there's the three goals: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So we've got a lot of data on an AI system. We got to protect that system just like we have to protect the rest of the systems, which means we need everything that we would normally do. Now, we also have to understand that AI can be used to attack you and assist a penetration tester or a hacker, or AI could be used to defend you. And that's why I typically don't use the cloud providers' firewalls. I use the types of firewalls from, say, Palo Alto or Fortinet or Cisco, because they use AI to adaptively look at the situation, see the weaknesses in the system, and then adapt. Same thing with our Siemens source systems. They can start looking for patterns of behavior. They see something, they can stop it. Same things with our intrusion detection, intrusion prevention system. They can sense and they can attack. So AI and security needs to be there. But imagine we have an AI agent and its information is corrupted. That agent could be doing some very bad things that could be very harmful. So AI security is going to be critical. But when it comes down to it, what does it take? It takes application security, meaning protecting the application, protecting APIs, protecting its code, protecting the systems, protecting the integrity of the system, the integrity of the storage, the hardware, network security, IAM security, physical security, because all this stuff kind of matters. Application security, like secure coding practices, so policies, procedures, everything. It's all in there. And it's absolutely, absolutely critical, which is why, you think of the cloud architect, the security architect, the enterprise architect, the AI architect as the job where there's so much demand. And here's the reality. There's no supply. There's a whole lot of people that know how to build, but no one knows how to design, and almost no one can understand the architectural trade-offs or the trade-offs that exist between various technologies and various solutions. That's the secret. So lots and lots and lots of opportunity, as well as AI security, is absolutely, absolutely, absolutely critical. Okay, well, I said I could stay till 12:30. I stayed till 12:30. It was so nice to see so many of you. I really love seeing people here, and I love that you joined us. I love that you participated. I love that you asked questions. Tomorrow, we're going to have a webinar on how to become an architect, and we will get deep into everything we do as architects, deep into what you need to do, deep into what it takes to get hired, what it takes to stand out, what it takes to build your brand, and everything else. And I'm going to answer this one very quickly from Peyton. Peyton, understand that there is a very large difference between what it takes to get a certification and what it takes to get a job. You could have all 13 AWS certifications, and honestly, you wouldn't have the skills for any job. So what we need to do is find out the job that you actually want, and then we can talk about all the skills that it's going to take. Because even if you wanted to work in the AWS cloud, 80% of what you're going to work on is not AWS stuff. And that's the things that totally matters. So if you'd like to become a cloud architect or a security architect, join us on the architecture webinar tomorrow. I'll go over the entire role. I'll talk about exactly what you need to do to switch careers, like when I went from a nurse practitioner practicing internal medicine to a senior engineer and then a lead architect within 3 months. So I'll talk about all of it, and I'll do it on this webinar. For my team, please drop a link to that. So I do want to help, but we need to know what you want, and then we need to figure out all of the skills. But the certifications are not going to be close to enough to do the job. But I'll tell you what, if you tell me what the job is on this webinar, I'll tell you the skills. And even if it's not an architect job, I'll still tell you the skills that you need, and I'll tell you what you learn, and I'll tell you what you need to do. But please don't think certifications, except for the CCIE, are ever enough to get a job. They're just not. They can help you get an interview, but they will never be enough to get a job. And I'll talk about why that is tomorrow. So Good to see everybody. Join us on the How to Become an Architect webinar tomorrow. There's so many great things to discuss, and we'll talk and answer questions live on Zoom. And that way, if someone says, can I get done in 6 months? I can assess them and say, okay, here's your baseline. Yes, no, because then I have information to make a diagnosis and then come up with the right plan. Thank you all. If you had a good time, maybe give it a like, maybe share this video with a friend or others. And if you want to join us on the Google Professional Cloud Architect training this afternoon, go ahead. We are at day 8 of the completely free Google Professional Cloud Architect Bootcamp brought to you on this channel. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful day.